And what if eternity, so longed for, wasn't a promise of salvation, but the cruelest of prisons? A gilded cage, where the image we project becomes our only truth.
Cleopatra, Nietzsche, and Instagram.
An unlikely trio, a distant echo of ambitions, nihilism, and the relentless pursuit of validation. Do not seek here a biography, a faithful historical account. We will delve, yes, into a fragmented mirror, where power, rebellion, and ephemerality intertwine in a somber ballet. Think of Cleopatra, the Queen of the Nile, weaving her web of charms and alliances. A woman who understood the power of image, of seduction as a political weapon, of the carefully constructed narrative to perpetuate her influence. She was not merely a historical figure, but an archetype, the personification of ambition, of beauty as a tool, of the manipulation of others' perception. Now, transport yourself to the tormented mind of Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher of the will to power, of eternal recurrence, of the death of God. A thinker who dared to challenge established values, who diagnosed the moral decay of Western society, who glimpsed the abyss beneath the masks of morality. He, the prophet of transvaluation, the implacable critic of the search for meaning in an indifferent universe. And finally, behold Instagram, the realm of selfies and filters, where reality bends under the weight of the relentless pursuit of likes and followers. A virtual stage where we perform idealized versions of ourselves, where the approval of others becomes the currency of exchange, where authenticity dissolves into a sea of appearances. A mirror that reflects not who we are, but who we want others to believe we are.
What do Cleopatra, Nietzsche, and Instagram have in common?
The pursuit of power, the obsession with image, the fragility of identity in a world where truth becomes increasingly relative. Cleopatra sought political power and immortality through her image. Nietzsche questioned the very essence of power and the illusion of immortality through religion and morality. Instagram, in turn, offers a simulacrum of both, an ephemeral power measured in numbers and a virtual immortality, imprisoned in profiles and feeds. This is not a treatise on history, philosophy, or technology. It is an invitation to reflection.
An exploration of the depths of the human soul, of our darkest desires, of our greatest frailties.
A journey through time and space, in search of answers to questions that have haunted us since the beginning. Who are we?
What do we seek?
And at what price are we willing to sell our souls?
Prepare to question everything you think you know, to confront your own illusions.
To plunge into a labyrinth of mirrors, where truth and falsehood blur, where beauty and ugliness reveal themselves as faces of the same coin. Welcome to this improbable encounter, to this macabre dance between power, rebellion, and seduction. The journey is just beginning.
Deepening the analysis, we observe the nature of seduction.
Not the puerile, superficial seduction, tied to mere physical attraction, but seduction as the art of persuasion, as mastery of narrative, as the projection of a carefully crafted image. Cleopatra personified this mastery. She was not just beautiful, she was intelligent, cunning, and possessed a profound knowledge of human psychology. Her seduction was a political weapon, an instrument to achieve her goals. In this sense, Cleopatra's seduction finds a distorted echo in the universe of Instagram. There, seduction manifests itself in the form of filters, strategic poses, and carefully crafted captions. The pursuit of likes and followers becomes an obsession, a need for external validation that fuels the fragility of the ego. However, unlike Cleopatra, who used seduction as a means to an end, many Instagram users seem to get lost in the labyrinth of appearances, transforming seduction into an end in itself. On the other hand, Nietzsche, with his implacable vision of the human condition, warns us about the dangers of the relentless pursuit of approval. He argued that traditional morality, with its imposed values, imprisons us and prevents us from reaching our true essence. The quest to please others, to conform to social expectations, alienates us from ourselves and prevents us from exercising our will to power. In this context, Instagram presents itself as a battlefield where Nietzsche's will to power manifests itself in a paradoxical way. On one hand, the platform offers the opportunity to express individuality, to build a personal brand, and to influence others. On the other hand, the pursuit of likes and followers can become a form of slavery, a dependence on external validation that prevents us from being authentic. Analogously, consider Plato's allegory of the cave. Instagram users, trapped in the digital cave, only contemplate the shadows projected on the screen. They believe that these images represent reality, but they are unaware of the true nature of things. Like Plato's prisoners, they are alienated from the truth and live in a world of illusions. In contrast, Nietzsche's philosophy invites us to break with the chains of traditional morality and to seek our own truth. He encourages us to question established values, to challenge social conventions, and to affirm our individuality. However, this search for authenticity can be dangerous, as it exposes us to isolation and misunderstanding. Furthermore, we must ask ourselves whether the pursuit of power and validation on Instagram is really different from the pursuit of power and recognition that has always existed in human history. Cleopatra sought political power and immortality through her image. Roman emperors sought glory through conquest. Artists sought fame through their work. Is Instagram, in this sense, not just a new way of expressing an ancestral desire? Moreover, the question that arises is, how can we use Instagram consciously and responsibly without getting lost in the labyrinth of appearances? How can we take advantage of the opportunities that the platform offers without becoming slaves to external validation? How can we affirm our individuality without isolating ourselves from the community? These are questions that deserve deep and honest reflection. Delving even further into this labyrinth of mirrors, we confront the question of authenticity. In a world saturated with carefully constructed images, where the line between the real and the simulated becomes increasingly blurred, how can we discern what is genuine from what is mere representation? Cleopatra, a master in the art of self-promotion, would certainly have delighted in the possibilities offered by social media. However, the question that persists is, which Cleopatra would be presented to the world? The astute and ambitious queen, or a filtered and idealized version, designed to please the contemporary public? In this sense, Nietzsche's philosophy offers us an antidote against the illusion of manufactured authenticity. He invites us to embrace our own imperfection, to recognize our own contradiction, to celebrate our unique and unrepeatable individuality. Authenticity, for Nietzsche, is not a state to be achieved, but a continuous process of self-affirmation, of overcoming imposed values, and of creating a new meaning for existence. However, the search for authenticity in a world obsessed with image can be a solitary and challenging journey. The pressure to conform to established standards of beauty and success, the need to fit into certain social niches, the temptation to surrender to the relentless pursuit of likes and followers can divert us from the path of self-affirmation and imprison us in a vicious cycle of comparison and dissatisfaction. Similarly, let us think about performance. Instagram, as a global stage, invites us to perform for a virtual audience. We present edited versions of ourselves, highlighting the happiest moments, the most elaborate looks, the most impressive achievements. But what happens to our true essence behind this digital mask? Does constant performance not end up alienating us from ourselves, transforming us into mere actors in a virtual theater? In contrast, existentialist philosophy, personified by figures like Simone de Beauvoir, reminds us that our existence precedes our essence. We are free to define ourselves, to create our own meaning, to become who we want to be. However, this freedom implies an enormous responsibility. The responsibility to assume the consequences of our choices, to take responsibility for our own existence. Therefore, authenticity is not an innate gift, but an arduous conquest, a process of self-knowledge and self-acceptance that requires courage, honesty, and perseverance. It takes courage to show vulnerability, to admit one's weaknesses, to celebrate one's peculiarities. It takes honesty to question oneself, to challenge oneself, to constantly reinvent oneself. It takes perseverance to keep moving forward, even when the path becomes difficult, even when doubt and fear haunt us. Furthermore, let us reflect on Jung's concept of persona. The persona is the social mask we wear to interact with the world, the face we present to others. However, the persona is not our true essence. It is only a part of us, a superficial representation of our inner complexity. The danger lies in identifying excessively with our persona, in forgetting who we really are behind the mask. Therefore, the challenge that arises is, how can we use social media as tools for self-expression and connection without getting lost in the illusion of manufactured authenticity? How can we build an online image that is faithful to our true essence without surrendering to the pressure to conform to established standards? How can we find a balance between performance and authenticity, between the projection of an idealized image and the celebration of our own imperfection? Exploring now the ethical dimension of this intricate game of mirrors, we confront the question of responsibility. If we are the architects of our own digital image, what are the moral implications of our choices? Cleopatra, by manipulating the perception that others had of her, wielded considerable power, but also bore the weight of the consequences of her actions. Similarly, in the universe of Instagram, each like, each comment, each post contributes to the construction of a collective narrative, to the formation of a public opinion. In this context, the philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas invites us to rethink our relationship with the other. For Levinas, the face of the other is an appeal to our responsibility, a call to our moral conscience. The other is not merely an object to be manipulated or used for our own purposes, but a subject with intrinsic dignity and value. When we encounter the face of the other, we are confronted with our own finitude and with our responsibility for their existence. However, in the virtual environment, the face of the other often becomes invisible, obscured by avatars, fake profiles, and superficial interactions. Physical distance and the absence of direct contact can lead us to treat others with less empathy and consideration, to hide behind anonymity, to utter offensive comments, or disseminate false information. In contrast, let us think about Hannah Arendt's concept of the banality of evil. Arendt argued that evil is not necessarily practiced by monstrous people or psychopaths, but by ordinary individuals who are carried away by bureaucracy, by blind obedience to authority, and by a lack of critical reflection. Similarly, on Instagram, we can become accomplices of evil by sharing fake news, by propagating prejudiced stereotypes, or by supporting abusive behaviors, without even realizing the consequences of our actions. Analogously, the ethics of virtue, exemplified by Aristotle, reminds us that the pursuit of moral excellence is a continuous process of learning and improvement. Virtues, such as honesty, justice, courage, and temperance, are not innate gifts, but habits that we cultivate through constant practice. On Instagram, we can cultivate virtue by sharing accurate and relevant information, by promoting constructive dialogue, and by defending the rights of others. Therefore, responsibility on Instagram is not limited to avoiding illegal or offensive behaviors. It also implies cultivating empathy, compassion, and solidarity, promoting a culture of respect and inclusion, using the platform as a tool for the common good. It implies recognizing that our online actions have a real impact on the offline world and that we are responsible for the consequences of these actions. Furthermore, let us reflect on Rousseau's concept of social contract. Rousseau argued that society is founded on a tacit contract between individuals, in which each one renounces part of their freedom in exchange for protection and collective well-being. On Instagram, this social contract manifests itself in the platform's rules of conduct, privacy policies, and mechanisms for reporting abuse. However, compliance with this social contract depends on our individual willingness to respect the rules and to act responsibly. Therefore, the challenge that arises is, how can we build a culture of responsibility and ethics on Instagram, where users feel encouraged to act consciously and to take responsibility for their actions? How can we promote dialogue and critical reflection on the moral implications of using the platform? How can we create effective mechanisms to combat disinformation, hate speech, and abusive behavior? As we approach the resolution of this mosaic of reflections, the complexity of the tapestry we weave becomes evident. Cleopatra, Nietzsche, and Instagram do not reveal themselves as isolated entities, but as echoes of a perennial human quest, the search for meaning, power, and connection in a constantly transforming world. Seduction, rebellion, and validation, once singular strategies, converge in a whirlwind of appearances and longings, challenging us to decipher what is genuine and what is mere projection. In the meantime, the shadow of responsibility hovers over every click, every post, every interaction. The apparent lightness of the digital world hides the weight of consequences, the invisible web that connects our online actions to the fabric of reality. Authenticity, so longed for, reveals itself as a faint beacon in the midst of the fog of performativity, demanding a constant effort of self-knowledge and self-affirmation. Observing the journey traveled, we realize that the trap does not lie in the tool itself, but in how we use it. Instagram, like a magic mirror, reflects both our virtues and our weaknesses, amplifying our potential and exposing our vulnerabilities. The key lies in mastering the reflection, in shaping the image we project, in using the power of the platform to build bridges instead of walls. In contrast, the search for external validation, the obsession with likes and followers, can turn into an invisible chain, imprisoning us in a vicious cycle of comparison and dissatisfaction. Freedom of expression, once a revolutionary ideal, can degenerate into a cacophony of noises, obscuring the voices that really matter. In light of these findings, the path forward becomes clearer. It is not about demonizing Instagram or denying our online presence, but about cultivating a critical awareness, questioning the values imposed on us, affirming our individuality with courage and honesty. It is about transforming the mirror into a window, using the platform to connect, inspire, and transform the world around us. Just as a river finds its course, our journey through the maze of mirrors leads us to a turning point. What will we do with the knowledge we have acquired? What kind of image do we choose to project? What legacy do we want to leave in the digital world? The answer to these questions lies in each of us, in our ability to transcend appearances and embrace our true essence. Considering the vastness of what we have explored, imagine the following analogy. We are navigators in a digital ocean, equipped with an incomplete map and an imprecise compass. The compass represents our values, our sense of ethics and responsibility. The map represents our knowledge, our understanding of the world. The vessel represents our identity, our ability to express ourselves and connect with others. The storm represents the challenges and pitfalls of the digital world. The island represents our goal, our desire to find meaning, power, and connection. The journey is long and arduous, but the reward is worth it. Reflecting on this journey so far, let us prepare for the last step, for the final synthesis that will allow us to glimpse the light at the end of the tunnel. The time to unravel the enigma is approaching. And so, we come to the end of our exploration, not with definitive answers, but with an invitation to continued inquiry. Cleopatra, Nietzsche, and Instagram, seemingly so disparate, reveal themselves to be faces of the same mirror, reflecting the eternal human quest for power, meaning, and validation. We discovered that seduction can be both a weapon of conquest and a mask that imprisons us, that rebellion can free us from the shackles of convention, but also isolate us in our own individuality, and that external validation, although gratifying, can never fill the existential void. The truth that emerges from this unlikely encounter is that authenticity is not a destination, but a journey. It is not about denying our need for recognition, but about cultivating a more conscious relationship with our own image, recognizing our own imperfection, and celebrating our own uniqueness. It is about transforming the mirror into a window, using digital tools to build bridges instead of walls, to connect instead of isolate, to inspire instead of manipulate. In this sense, Instagram, like any other tool, is neutral. Its value lies in how we use it, in the intention we put into each click, each post, each interaction. We can choose to get lost in the maze of appearances, become slaves to external validation, become alienated from our own essence. Or we can choose to use the platform as an instrument of self-expression, connection, and transformation.
The choice, as always, is ours.
But so is the responsibility to bear the consequences of that choice. We cannot hide behind the anonymity of the internet, nor delude ourselves with the ephemerality of likes and followers. Our online actions have a real impact on the offline world, and we are responsible for that impact. Therefore, may we use Instagram with wisdom, ethics, and compassion. May we cultivate empathy, honesty, and courage, both online and offline. May we always remember that behind every profile, every avatar, every edited photo, there is a human being with dreams, fears, and hopes. Thus, as we turn off the screen, we take with us the following reflection. True power does not reside in the number of likes we receive, but in the quality of the connections we establish. True beauty does not reside in the perfection of the image we project, but in the authenticity of the essence we reveal. True freedom does not reside in rebellion against imposed values, but in the affirmation of our own truth. May the journey continue, now on a more intimate and personal level. May the search for authenticity be a constant in our lives. May we always remember that the mirror reflects only the surface, but that true beauty lies in the depths of the soul.
The real practice begins now.